Decrypting incoming transmission. Codename Scorpio. The Nightfall Protocol. The repair bay breathed in slow mechanical rhythms, hydraulics shifting, coolant systems exhaling, metal settling into place after stress and strain. Repairing starships on an orbital station was never quiet, but it was controlled, predictable, exactly how Charlie preferred it. After years of military service, she was ingrained with a deep need for consistency and structure. Charlie hadn't always worked in places like this, but she was definitely built for them. The Nebula Defense Corps conscripted her at a young age, refined her warrior spirit, and augmented her physique as the foundation for her training as a combat engineer, the kind of environment where failure meant casualties. Standing at over 2 meters tall with imposing musculature, she could handle weight and pressure that would break most people. Charlie learned to read machines the way others read poetry. She stood beneath a suspended engine housing, one hand braced against a structural plate that should have required a full lift rig to stabilize. Instead, she held it steady while guiding a plasma torch along a fractured seam, her movements deliberate and precise. She didn't check the readouts. She didn't need to. Years of experience guided her hand. The weld was sealed clean, nearly seamless. Above her work area, a broadcast filtered through a battered speaker hanging from a support beam. Third confirmed incident this cycle. Authorities report the use of a high-grade biological agent. Casualties are estimated to be in the hundreds. Evacuation efforts continue as... Without looking, Charlie reached up to raise the volume as the broadcast continued. The group, now referred to as the Veil, remains unidentified. Witness accounts describe masked operatives and coordinated extraction protocols. Military officials have declined to confirm whether these tactics match any known mercenary groups who... Charlie resumed her work, finishing the seam with a final pass. Behind her, a figure dropped lightly from an upper catwalk. The landing was silent, controlled, familiar. "Your angle is off," said Alin, his voice calm, almost observational. Charlie didn't turn. "No, it's not." There was a brief pause as Alin studied the work, his gaze scanning the weld line. "Yes, it is," he said plainly. Charlie adjusted the torch slightly and finished the pass. "Not anymore." Alin inclined his head, accepting the correction. "No, not anymore." Charlie powered down the torch before turning to face him. Alin looked anything but human. His combat-built frame made that clear, but there was an ease in the way he carried himself around Charlie, a familiarity in his presence that felt entirely human. When it came to his duties, however, the robot moved with a precision that edged into something colder. He had a designation once, ALI-9, Adaptive Logistics Interface, 9th iteration, originally deployed as a long-range ordnance platform. When distance failed, he was built to close it. A 7-foot pulse cannon once traveled with him, disassembled into pieces that fit into a simple case. When that wasn't enough, he was equipped with a plasma dagger on each hip. He was engineered to be efficient and deadly at every range. Years of shared deployment had blurred the line between operator and assistant. Battlefield and engine room alike, Alin had been there for all of it. Now he stood beside her in the quiet of the repair bay, holding out a small packet of protein nibs. "You haven't eaten," he said, already offering it. Charlie glanced at it, unimpressed. "I'm working." "You've been working for 9 hours," he said, extending the packet even closer. She rolled her eyes and took it anyway. She always did. "What about you? Did you sleep?" she asked. "I entered low-power mode for 3 hours," he replied. "That's not sleep," Charlie scoffed playfully. "That's exactly what your body does," said Alin. Charlie exhaled a faint, almost amused breath as she upended the tiny packet into her mouth. The broadcast continued quietly above them, filling the background like a distant storm. Alin glanced toward the speaker, then back at her. "Another incident with the Veil?" Charlie nodded, her expression tightening just slightly. "Yeah, but something doesn't add up." Alin tilted his head. "How so?" "Groups like the Veil don't think this small," Charlie said, almost to herself. "These attacks, They're too simple. Minimal casualties. No real infrastructure damage. Same scale every time. Same cleanup window. She paused, eyes narrowing as the pieces settled into place. Hitting 3 worlds with the same weapon. It's not about impact. It's about data, deployment windows, response times, dialing in exposure rates, figuring out which systems react the slowest. Alin watched her for a moment. You've given this more than passing thought. Charlie exhaled faintly. It's hard not to. I assumed the reports were background noise, Alin said. Not analysis. Charlie gave a small, humorless smirk. Yeah, I thought I was done with that too. A brief silence passed. I don't think that part of me ever really shuts off, she said softly. Alin went still for a moment to process. Controlled deployment, he said finally. A logical first phase. The realization hung in the air for a moment before Charlie changed her tone. She let out a quick breath, shaking her head slightly, as if clearing it away. Not our problem, she said, reaching for the torch again, her voice a little too casual to be convincing. The bay filled the silence, the steady hum of machinery, the distant echo of the broadcast continuing on without them. Alin didn't respond right away. He just watched her, still and observant, the way he always did when there was something that Charlie was choosing not to say. They had both lived through the outcomes of tactical analysis and knew where it tended to lead. Charlie adjusted her grip, reigniting the torch, focusing a little harder than necessary on the seam in front of her. We fix ships, she added firmly. That's the job. The torch flared to life, and the world narrowed back down to heated metal and alignment. Whatever the veil was doing out there, stayed out there. They continued their work without much conversation after that. Alin moved along the upper frame, recalibrating a guidance array that had been installed just slightly off axis. His hands moved with quiet precision, tools appearing and disappearing from his limbs without wasted motion. Below, Charlie sealed the final seam on the engine housing, letting the metal cool just long enough before running a gloved hand across it to feel for imperfections. Thruster alignment still drifting, Alin said from above. Because you haven't fixed it yet, Charlie replied without looking. Working on it, Alin replied. Charlie smirked faintly to herself and powered down the torch. The engine gave a low, stable hum as systems came online, the vibrations settling into something clean and consistent. She stepped back, listening. That was always the final test. Not the diagnostics, not the readouts, but the sound. All good, she said after a few seconds had passed. Alin dropped down from the upper structure, landing beside her. That's the last one. Charlie nodded, already wiping her hands. Log it and send the pickup notice. Following her instructions, Alin disappeared into a small office room while Charlie started tidying their workstations, her usual closing ceremony which signified the end of a work cycle. The bay settled into a quieter rhythm as systems powered down around them. Tools retracted. Overhead lights dimmed slightly. Another job finished. Another cycle closed. For a moment it felt like the day was over. Then suddenly, the magnetic containment field at the edge of the bay shimmered. A ship was pulling through. Too smooth, too quiet, and unscheduled. Charlie didn't like that. Alin had already exited the office, tracking the incoming vessel as it touched down with unnatural stealth. There was no vibration, no thermal distortion, none of the imperfections that came with honest machinery. We had nothing booked for this time slot, he said softly. Charlie straightened slowly, her attention shifting fully now. Kill the external logs. Let's keep this off record. Already done. The ship began to power down as its ramp lowered with controlled precision. 3 figures descended first, their movements coordinated but restrained. Then a 4th figure emerged, followed by 2 more. Everything about them was deliberate, but the 4th had an entitled air about him, the way he walked, the way he held eye contact. He occupied the space as if it were under his jurisdiction. You're available, he said, a statement more than a question. Charlie stepped forward, wiping her hands again, buying herself a moment to study him. We're not, actually. A faint smile touched his expression. You will be. Alin shifted slightly beside her, not aggressive but ready. Got a name? Charlie asked. The man took a leisurely scan around the bay before he answered. Kovacs. Okay, she replied dryly. What brings you unannounced to my repair station, Kovacs? Shields need to be patched. Minor integration work. Charlie's eyes scanned the 5 men behind him. Define minor. Within your capabilities, he said, with a notable decrease in patience. Charlie glanced at the ship, then back at him. Something about it felt wrong. I'll have to charge you double our usual rate, she said. You're not on the schedule, so… Done, he exclaimed before she could finish her point. Charlie didn't like that either, but she nodded once. We'll take a look. The agreement sat between them for a moment, unspoken but understood. Charlie glanced once more at the ship, then back to the client. It's not a quick job, she said. We'll need time. The client didn't move. We can wait. Alin stepped in, slightly assertive. No, you can't, he said bluntly. A tense moment of cold silence fell over the repair bay. The escorts shifted, subtle but coordinated. Not combative, but prepared. Charlie didn't react to them. Her attention stayed on the spokesman of the group. This bay runs closed during repair cycles, she said. No outside personnel. No exceptions. Kovacs studied her, weighing the statement rather than challenging it. You're cautious, he said. Charlie shrugged faintly. I'm thorough. Another pause stretched between them, thin but steady. Then Kovacs exhaled, almost amused. Very well, he said. We'll return tomorrow. Charlie nodded once. You can call for private transport. No need. He turned slightly, and a section of the ship's underside shifted open with a quiet mechanical release. A compact shuttle detached from the hull and lowered to the bay floor. Alin watched it closely, tracking every movement. Redundancy? He asked. Kovacs paused at the entrance, humored by the assertive robot. A habit, he said with a grin. We won't be far. Notify me the moment it's done. Kovacs boarded first. The escorts followed slowly as if reluctant to leave the ship unattended. The shuttle powered up, lifting smoothly before slipping through the magnetic containment field and out into open space. The bay fell quiet again, but not the same quiet as before. Alin rotated in place to face Charlie. I picked up elevated heart rates when we told them to leave, he said. Too reactive for hired security. Charlie adjusted a dial on her armband, the bay doors sealed shut behind them. Yeah, a little too twitchy for something that's standard protocol. Let's not let this one sit, Charlie said, already stepping toward the ramp. I'll run on-board diagnostics, environmental controls and containment integrity. You take the exterior. I want a full scan for structural fatigue, thermal stress, anything that doesn't match the profile. Understood, Alin replied, already in motion. By the time she reached the ship, he was at the primary console, routing the bay's sensors into a focused sweep. The interior of the ship felt over-engineered. The air was too clean, too evenly filtered, as if something inside required precise environmental control. Charlie moved slowly through the main corridor, her hand brushing lightly along the wall, feeling for inconsistencies, listening through contact. Alin worked in parallel, scanning systems, mapping energy signatures. Charlie, Alin's voice said from her armband. She stopped in front of a wall panel that sounded surprisingly hollow as her finger traced along its surface. Yeah, she replied. I'm picking up a trace. She slowed her movements, waiting for Alin to continue. Biological, Alin said quietly. The words settled heavily between them. Charlie blinked slowly and took a shallow breath. Confirm, please. There was an extended, anxious pause. Inconclusive, Alin exclaimed, suddenly from right beside her. Charlie reacted instantly, dropping into a combat stance before the word even registered. Her breath caught sharp as she turned. Damn it, Alin. He paused, then raised his hand slowly. Apologies. That was not my intention. Charlie exhaled. Tension still coiled in her shoulders as the adrenaline worked its way out. I thought it would be more efficient if we switched places, he continued, until we identify the trace element. Biological threats are disproportionately hazardous to you. There was a brief silence. Charlie straightened slowly, rolling her shoulders once. Good call, she said, still carrying a trace of irritation. But if you sneak up on me like that again, I'm welding a bell to your frame. Alin considered that for a moment. Noted. She stepped past him toward the exit, pausing just long enough to rest her hand briefly against his shoulder, a quiet acknowledgement. Check that panel, she said without looking, pointing at the wall where she had been standing. She made her way to the repair bay console and opened a comms link with Alin. Inside the ship, he swiveled his head rhythmically as he scanned the panel. There is dead space behind this section. See if you can open it, said Charlie. Alin braced his posture with a fluid ballet of mechanized adjustments. Magnetizing the palms of his hands, he placed them carefully on either end of the panel. With a pressurized hiss, he ripped the panel away, rotating his torso to set the panel gently on the ground. We should have charged them triple, he said after a pause. Why? What did you find? Alin routed his visual feed to the repair bay console. The image expanded across the screen. A reinforced transport cylinder filled with a dense purple liquid. Its surface was layered in every hazard label and insignia associated with bioweaponry. Charlie leaned closer to the monitor. Is that what I think it is? Alin didn't answer immediately. Confirmed, he said finally. VX9 neurotoxin. Charlie's jaw tightened. Nightfall. How the hell did they get their hands on Nightfall? She said under her breath. Alin took a small step back as he processed. Acquisition pathway unknown. Legal channels are improbable. Forget how they got it, Charlie snapped. Why is there 20 liters of it sitting in my repair bay? Alin didn't respond. He was already scanning. Charlie. What? There's dead space behind the adjacent panel as well. Charlie's expression shifted instantly. Alin was already bracing to open it. The panel came free with a sharp release. Inside, hanging from a section of electrical conduit, was a row of uniforms. Charlie exhaled slowly, something cold settling into place. How many? Alin ran a quick count. 6. Another short pause. Confirmed match, he added. Design and material consistent with known Veil operatives. They fell into a long silence, each of them processing the significance of the discovery. This was far beyond anything they should have been dealing with this far removed from military service. Smugglers, crime bosses, and black market dealers were to be expected, but this was something else entirely. Terrorists, planning a mass casualty event, using the same poison that took people whom Charlie and Alin had fought beside. People they hadn't been able to save. This wasn't business anymore. It wasn't even personal. It was something deeper, something older. What was left of her sense of duty didn't stir. It locked in. They had to be stopped. Very few people in this quadrant were qualified to do it. Charlie and Alin were two of them. Alin turned toward her, the hum of the bay settling around them. How do you want to proceed? Charlie didn't answer immediately. She stood behind the control panel, eyes locked on the containment readout, the faint purple glow holding steady. If they convert this to an aerosol, she said, and disperse it into a planetary atmosphere, it'll wipe out millions, she said quietly. We can't let that happen. Alin pulled up the schematics of the ship and the requested modifications. The repairs, he said, are not functional upgrades. They're maintenance. Charlie glanced at him. Stealth systems, he continued. Thermal masking, signature suppression. They intend to remain undetected while deploying the payload remotely. Charlie's expression hardened. The shuttle. Correct, Alin said. The main vessel maintains distance. The shuttle performs atmospheric dispersal. We need to call this in. Charlie's gaze returned to the ship. No. When the authorities respond, they'll broadcast it. Warnings, alerts, system-wide chatter. The Veil will find out immediately and disappear. Alin went still for a moment of analysis. Our best strategy is to ensure they return here as intended. Charlie closed her fists, sharpening her focus. I have a plan, Charlie said. Here's what we need to do. They moved without hesitation. Alin was already back aboard the ship, interfacing with its systems, rerouting controls, resetting panels, scrubbing anything that might give away what they'd found. Across the bay, Charlie worked the space. Equipment and tool racks repositioned and clamped into place. Lines of sight opened, others deliberately obstructed. Every movement had purpose, turning the repair bay into something tighter, more controlled. When she was done, she stepped back, scanning the layout once more. Careful with that, Charlie called out. Alin had just stepped off the ramp with the containment cylinder secured in his hands. Make sure it's sealed in one of the rear cryo tanks, she continued. Be gentle, no fluctuations. He stopped and slowly turned. I have the steadiest hands on this station, he said, sounding almost offended. Charlie glanced at him, unimpressed. Good. Then, get moving. He paused for a brief moment. Understood. Then started toward the rear corridor. Alin? He stopped again. Please and thank you. She added with a faint edge of apology in her voice. Noted, he replied. Then he disappeared down the corridor. Charlie returned to the ship, finishing the last of the visible work. Her armband crackled. The cylinder is secured, Alin said. Cryo-stabilization within acceptable range. I placed the uniforms near the ship's entrance, as requested. Perfect, Charlie replied, already moving. She reached the base of the ramp, scooped up the uniforms and tossed them into a loose pile just off to the side, intentionally careless and visible. She paused, giving the bay one final scan. Everything was in place, every angle accounted for. Charlie stepped back to the control panel and took a slow breath, opened comms and sent the pickup notice. The reply came almost instantly. Closing in. The voice carried a deliberate edge. Charlie engaged the magnetic field and opened the exterior bay doors. A few moments later, the shuttle was approaching the station at speed. Just short of the bay, it decelerated sharply, then eased forward with controlled precision. Blue light rippled across the docking threshold as the craft passed through the magnetic containment field. Charlie moved to the center of the space, calm, grounded, waiting. Alin was nowhere visible. The shuttle door irised open before it had even settled onto the landing pad. Charlie took it as a sign that they were eager to check on their ship. Her suspicion was confirmed the moment all 6 men disembarked, fast and precise. Their movements carried a paramilitary sharpness that didn't belong in a repair bay. Took you longer than I expected, Kovacs said, stepping forward. I considered dropping by to... He stopped. His gaze locked onto the pile of uniforms at his feet. Charlie didn't rush. She stepped calmly behind a tool chest, wiping her hands as if nothing had changed. I told you before, she said evenly. I'm thorough. The bay erupted. Kovacs broke for the ship while 3 of his men drew and fired in one fluid motion. White-hot ionic rounds tore across the space, slamming into the tool chest. But Charlie was already moving, dropping behind cover before the first shot cleared the barrel. Inside the ship, Kovacs and his remaining men tore into the panel where the VX had been concealed. Metal clattered to the floor as they ripped it open. No, he snarled. Where the hell is it? It's still here, said one of his men, fumbling with a forearm scanner. Readings live, somewhere in the rear of the station. Then move, Kovacs snapped. Find my Nightfall. The men rushed back out, nearly colliding as they pushed past each other, then disappeared down the rear corridor at a dead sprint. Back in the bay, the tool chest smoldered under sustained fire, sparks hissing across its surface. Charlie remained crouched behind it, perfectly still, waiting, counting. The gunmen halted their fire to reload as two of them closed in on either side of her. That was her window. As the two nearest operatives closed in on her, the tool chest exploded forward, launched with sudden, violent force, slamming into the third gunman and dropping him where he stood. The others barely had time to process it before Charlie moved. An industrial torque wrench left her hand in a tight, spinning arc, striking one of them square in the chest and driving him hard into the deck. She was already closing on the last. A shot cracked past her as she dipped under it, then pivoted, her heel snapping across his face with brutal precision, sending him cartwheeling over a stack of crates. In the span of a breath, 3 men lay broken across the bay. Suddenly, an ionic round tore past her head. Charlie moved instantly, dropping low and rolling behind the main console as another shot scorched the space she'd just occupied. Across the bay, Kovacs crouched behind the shuttle near the containment field, waiting for another angle. Elsewhere, deep in the station's rear corridors, 2 Veil operatives advanced cautiously, weapons raised. "We're close," one muttered, glancing at the data flickering across his forearm display. They turned the corner and moved toward the end of the corridor, where a transparent barrier revealed the containment cylinder suspended in a cryochamber beyond. They quickened their pace, but Alin made sure they never made it. For a moment, he had been indistinguishable from the structure itself, his metallic frame aligned perfectly with the surfaces along the corridor. By the time they noticed movement, it was already too late. He seized the arm holding the scanner and rotated it cleanly out of the socket. The joint dislocated with a muffled, fleshy snap. The first operative dropped before he could make a sound. The second squeezed off a wild shot, but it was too wide. Alin arched his back just enough to let the round pass, then stepped in to deliver a precise strike across the man's forehead. He hit the deck instantly. Charlie's armband crackled softly. "Cleared," Alin said plainly. Charlie tilted her head back slightly, resting it on the console in relief. The containment field shifted, its soft blue glow hardening into a warning red as Charlie rerouted power through the bay's control systems. Kovacs noticed immediately. "You've locked the bay," he said. Charlie rose slightly from behind the console, just enough to be heard. "No one's coming or going," she replied. "Not you, not your ship." A brief pause settled between them. "Oh, and your men are all down." Silence followed, then a slow, measured exhale. "I wondered," he said, attempting to seem unbothered. "I have to admit," he called out, "I'm impressed. Pretty violent for a mechanic." "Combat engineer," she shot back, emphasis on combat, sensing that he was now trapped. Kovacs reached into his coat. A mask snapped into place over his face with practiced efficiency. A small purple canister appeared in his hand as he stepped out from behind the shuttle. Charlie's eyes narrowed. Then suddenly, a streak of red light cut through the air as Alin dropped from the overhead catwalk without a sound. The crimson glow of a plasma dagger passed through Kovacs's arm before he could remove the pin from the canister. Alin caught the canister cleanly and wrenched it free from the severed arm without breaking stride. For a fraction of a second, no one moved. "Cleared," repeated Alin as though nothing had happened. Kovacs screamed with raw, unrestrained agony as he staggered backward, clutching what remained of his arm before he collapsed to one knee. His breathing was sporadic through the mask, shock overtaking whatever composure he had left. Charlie finally stood to her feet and steadily paced toward Kovacs. He had been reduced to incoherent rambling from the overwhelming pain. She swept his gun away with the tip of her boot, without a word, more out of mercy than anger. She drew back her fist and knocked him unconscious. "I suppose dismemberment was a more efficient option than blowing him out of the airlock," she said as she turned to look at Alin. He paused in consideration. "Correct." Charlie's gaze shifted to the ship. "Let's clean this up. It all has to go." "Agreed," came the dry reply. The 2 remaining operatives in the rear of the station never fully came to, just enough awareness to struggle once before Alin secured them and moved them aboard their shuttle. Minutes later, all 6 Veil operatives, injured, restrained, and barely conscious, were strapped into their seats. Charlie tossed the pile of uniforms through the shuttle entrance as Alin settled into the cockpit. The systems came alive under his hands with minimal input as he bypassed the primary nav interface, dropping into the deeper control layer. A nearby moon filled the forward display, fractured, unlit, and isolated. "I'm setting a controlled descent," he said over comms. "The shuttle will crash land intact. Distress beacon will trigger on impact." He made a final adjustment, locking out the ignition sequence and flight controls beyond touchdown. "They'll be stranded," he continued. "Alive, identifiable, and unable to leave." Charlie's voice came back, steady as ever. "Perfect. No loose ends." Alin finished entering the last string of code before exiting the shuttle. The door irised closed behind him with well-timed precision. The shuttle hummed to life and slowly lifted from the landing pad. The repair bay shimmered with blue light once again as the vessel transitioned through the containment field and initiated its preset route. Charlie began the work of returning their workspace back into something that resembled a functioning business. The repair bay had temporarily become a battlefield, but was about to become a chop shop. The cloaking devices and containment equipment on board the ship were worth a fortune to the right clientele. Ridding the station of a terrorist ship and stocking up on ship systems inventory would be a win-win. First things first, she thought to herself. We have to deal with that Nightfall. As she turned to head down the rear corridor, she was stopped by Alin, who was slowly extending a packet of protein nibs in her direction. She took it without a word. "VX eliminated," Alin said dryly. "Wait, what?" "What do you mean eliminated?" she mumbled through a half-chewed mouthful. Alin turned to point toward the containment field as a faint bloom of violet gas floated past the exterior bay doors before dissipating rapidly into the vacuum of space. He turned back to Charlie, but she was still looking out at the diminishing cloud, a grin slowly spreading across her face. "You, sir, are consistently efficient," she said with a light chuckle. "Correct," he replied, as nonchalant as ever. They spent the next several hours dismantling the Veil ship. It slowly came apart piece by piece. Not violently, but methodically. Panels were stripped, systems exposed, components removed with the kind of precision that turned destruction into a process. Tools moved in a steady rhythm, cutting, releasing, extracting. Charlie worked at the core housing, torch low and controlled as she severed a reinforced conduit. Across the fuselage, Alin had already opened the primary system's spine, isolating anything worth keeping from anything that needed to disappear. It didn't look like sabotage. It looked like work. Charlie reached up and flicked the battered speaker back on. Static filled the space for a moment before resolving into a broadcast already in progress. A voice layered into the background of the bay. Authorities confirming earlier reports that 6 individuals believed to be affiliated with the Veil have been recovered following a crash landing on one of Helion's outer moons. Charlie didn't stop working. Initial assessments suggest the vessel suffered a critical systems failure. No evidence of external assault has been confirmed. Alin glanced up briefly, processing the information. All 6 individuals were found alive, though severely injured. Officials are currently investigating the possibility that the crew was forced to abandon their primary vessel prior to impact. Charlie cut power to the torch and leaned back slightly, just enough to let out a quiet breath. Identities are being verified, but early indicators strongly suggest confirmed Veil affiliation. She smirked as Alin stepped down from the open panel, head tilting just slightly. "A successful outcome," he said. Charlie wiped her hands on a cloth, eyes still on the dismantled hull. "Yeah," she said. "I'll take it." Then, the broadcast cut out abruptly. No static, no transition. The silence that followed felt different. Not empty, but occupied. Then a voice. Low, smooth and measured. "Taking down a terrorist cell. With 0 casualties," it said. "That's not a common outcome." Neither of them responded. "I like your style," the voice continued. "Efficient, controlled, minimal collateral. You don't see that very often anymore." The voice paused in a way that seemed like appreciation. "You solve problems," the voice continued. without making new ones. Charlie's eyes shifted slightly. That's a rare skill. Alin's gaze moved across the bay, scanning. Not for sound, but for origin. There wasn't one. Charlie finally spoke. Who is this? A soft, almost amused breath on the other end. You can call me Scorpio. End of transmission. More files are being decrypted. Subscribe to stay connected.